Hello again, my little conscripts, and welcome to another Mordian Glory video. In today's episode, we shall be casting our ever-critical eye over an Imperial Guard 10th edition Codex datasheet. This time we have on our sights one of the most iconic units in all of the Guard. Synonymous with the word artillery, it is the Basilisk. Armed with its intimidatingly big, that's what she said, Earthshaker cannon, the Basilisk has been the staple of many a Guard army for literally decades at this point. And so I am really excited to review it in today's video. We're going to be getting into the nitty-gritty detail, looking at the stat line, the datasheet, all of that good stuff, and touching upon a few areas where the Basilisk is good, and maybe explaining why it's not quite as common as it once was. So without further ado, let's main gun range and shatter their skies right into this thing. As is tradition, we're going to start off by looking at the Basilisk stat line. There it is. You've seen it now. You can promptly forget about it. The Basilisk is an artillery piece. Typically, it's going to be firing its weapon indirectly. And honestly, that means it's not going to be moving much. And its defensive profile is almost irrelevant because it's going to be out of line of sight. But for the sake of completeness, let's go through what this thing actually has. It has a movement of 10. Perfect for staying still on your home objective. It's also got toughness 9 with a 3+ save and 11 wounds. That is the same stat line as the Chimera, which makes sense because the Basilisk is based off the Chimera chassis. On a serious note, that defensive stat line is actually quite nice because it makes the Basilisk pretty resilient to any counter battery fire. But to be honest, counter battery isn't really such a big thing anymore. At the beginning of 10th edition, when indirect fire was quite prevalent and you had lots of different armies trying it, having a defensive stat line like that was a really big deal. It separated the Basilisk from things like the Field Ordnance Battery. The Field Ordnance Battery was cheaper, but was more susceptible to actually dying to enemy indirect fire, whereas the Basilisk could happily eat whirlwind missiles all day and shoot back with no problems. But now that indirect fire is almost non-existent, really, I feel like Guard is the only faction that's still taking it. And with Hammer of the Emperor being around, less and less Guard players are focused on artillery. But still, it is an important factor. And whilst it's not as good at protecting you from counter battery fire simply because there's less coming at you, the defensive profile and the movement is actually a bit more relevant because there is a bit of a theory going around at the moment that the Basilisk is good at artillery, but you shouldn't dismiss its role as an assault gun. We'll get to that later on in the video when we talk about the Basilisk weapons, but for now, you can safely assume that your Basilisk, in the majority of games, is going to be sitting on your home objective and is going to be pretty durable to most things that are going to deep strike around it, and also to anything that's going to try and shoot back at it whilst it's hiding behind the L-shaped ruin on your home objective. Interestingly, the Leadership 7 and Objective Control 3 part of this profile are actually probably the most important parts, because Leadership 7 is important to make sure you continue holding that objective. There are quite a few abilities out there, off the top of my head, Tyranids, Shadow and the Warp, that force you to take leadership tests and to become battle shocked, and depending on when those abilities trigger could actually mean that you don't hold your home objective with the Basilisk. So making sure that you've got leadership 7 or a way of boosting that, or having 2 Basilisks, so you've got a bit of insurance there, sitting on home objective, is actually quite important. And objective control of 3, well, again, if we're thinking about Basilisk in terms of pairs, that's really nice because in total you'd have 6 OC on the home objective. If someone was to try and sneak it away from you with a 5-man elite unit, they'd struggle to do that because most elite units are only objective control 1 per model. 5-man equals 5 OC in total. So the Leadership 7 and the OC 3, normally we skip past these, but actually with the Basilisk are very important. But like I said, if I'm going to be brutally honest with you, you can almost forget the Basilisk stat line. I have actually forgotten the last time someone shot at one of my Basilisks when it was doing its job, my home objective. It just doesn't really happen. It only really happens if the game has gone completely to pot, and by that time, the Basilisk profile is the least of your worries. It's going to sit there on your home objective. Don't worry about this too much. So if the stat line is almost forgettably irrelevant, what is important about this unit? Well, naturally, it's the weapons, war gear, and abilities. Each Basilisk comes equipped with an Earthshaker cannon and heavy bolter and armored tracks. For most people, they won't want to change anything. That's totally fine. You only have 2 war gear options. You can replace the heavy bolter with heavy flamer, and you can just slap a hunter killer missile on this thing. Both of those, not a big deal. You're probably never going to fire the whole weapon anyway, because it hasn't got indirect fire. And if you've got the hunter killer missile left at the end of the game, that's not to be unexpected. One thing I do want to say though is most people prefer to give the Basilisk the heavy bolter. I will say that I have got heavy flamers on my Basilisks. This is mostly because I built them as a child, but I have actually found those to be, on occasion, surprisingly very relevant. Here's the thing. Sometimes your opponent will try and tie your Basilisks up. And having a heavy flamer on there means that your Earthshaker cannon can still fire indirectly, doing what it's doing anyway. But if you've got a heavy bolter, you probably won't clear anyone off the hull that's tying you up. Having a heavy flamer can actually do that. So I actually prefer to have heavy flamers on my Basilisk, but I want to make something so abundantly clear. When I say it's come up occasionally, I'm talking like once an edition. So if you prefer heavy bolters, go with those. If you prefer heavy flamers, go with those. In all honesty, it is completely player preference and won't make a blind bit of difference in 99.9% of EV games. Go with the weapon that you think's cooler. The reason you're taking this thing is not any of this shit. It's the Earthshaker cannon. Let's focus on the important and the best bit, the big dick gun. The Earthshaker cannon is blast with indirect fire with a whopping 240-inch range. If you're wondering why it's got a range that long, it's a holdover from previous editions, and GW has kept it because it's just a nod to the old grognards of the guard that like to pretend there's those stories where they could shoot from one table to another. It's a bit of fun, and I actually have a lot of respect for GW for not just like arbitrarily downgrading it to like 48-inch range and stupid. It's a bit of fan service to the community, and we appreciate it. Getting to the importance of though, D6 plus 3 attacks, reliable, especially with blast. That's good. Blizzard skill 4+, that's good. Strength 8, AP minus 2, and damage 2. Good, good, good. Strength 8 means that against a lot of MEQ, that's Marine Equivalent Infantry, you can be wounding on 2s. Against super heavy infantry, like Custodians and Terminators, you're still going to be wounding on 3s. That's good. Solid, reliable wounding. AP minus 2 is the big one here. It brings its own AP. This is something that I've been going on and on and on about in recent videos. I'll touch upon it very briefly here in case you've not seen those. I don't like AP minus 1 weapons. I don't like, even if you can then boost it up with Exterminators and Helens, I don't like any of that stuff. I like my units to bring their own AP because I'm not having to waste points or command points on something else to try and make another weapon actually do its job. AP minus 2 is very important on artillery because anytime you shoot someone with indirect fire, they get the benefit of cover. That's just one of the nerfs that's been brought in over the course of 10th edition. They just get the benefit of cover. So if you're an AP minus 1 artillery piece and your opponent's got the benefit of cover, you're basically like an AP non. Because it's +1 for cover, -1, they're on the base save. AP minus 2 actually means you can cut through the cover and start degrading the save behind it, which is important. And damage 2 is really nice because, well, it means every time you get a shot through against one of those intercessors or equivalent, it dies. And just being able to do that and not rely upon like D6 damage, which can be super swingy, or damage 1, which isn't quite powerful enough, just means that you're able to just slot a Marine every time they fail a save. I'm just going to say it. Controversial hot take, classic Mordian glory going hot. I think right now, the Earthshaker cannon, just taking a look at its stat line, is the best artillery piece that we have in all of the Guard. Obviously, it beats memes like the Death Strike and the Wyvern. The Wyvern is a goddamn meme unit. God damn it, GW. Just fix it or remove it. At this point, it's one of the only units that if GW squatted it, I wouldn't care. The Manticore, well, that's fallen from grace. And then you've got popular choices at the moment, like the Field Horns Battery, which is good. The bombast cannons are good, but very swingy. I've been using them a lot recently, and the 2d6 of blasts, it's not something you can rely upon. But the Basilisk, d6 was 3. Good, we like it. Consistent, reliable, and it's AP minus 2. So it does something the fob can't do, which is actually punish the enemy. And then you've got the siege gun and the heavy mortar of the artillery team. Heavy mortar might have the reliability, and it might have the strength 8, and it might have the damage 2, but it's only AP minus 1. It kind of struggles to deliver killing blow. And then the siege gun, well, that's higher strength. That's good AP, same AP as this, and it's flat damage 3, but it hasn't got the reliability. It's only D6 shots. The Basilisk is the only weapon out of all of the popular Guard artillery choices, and even the unpopular ones, that brings the reliability, that brings enough strength, that brings enough AP, and brings enough damage. But do you know what else it brings? A damn good ability as well. Earthshaker rounds. I would argue the best artillery ability right now. In your shooting phase, after this model has shot, if one or more of those attacks made with its Earthshaker cannon scored a hit against an enemy infantry unit, so a bit of a caveat there, until the start of your next shooting phase, that unit is shaken. While the unit is shaken, subtract 2 from its move characteristic and subtract 2 from advance and charge rolls made for it. Movement wins games. If you start messing with your opponent's movement, that makes it harder for them to get onto primary objectives. It makes them harder to get charges off that they want to do. It makes it hard for them to maybe achieve secondaries. Like, oh, I really need to get that engaged north fronts. Oh, it's a shame that you're -2 for your move. Oh, and then you had to -2 from your advance roll as well. So you ended up just not going anywhere near enough to get the engaged north fronts. It's just a really strong debuff. It's so strong that GW made a whole detachment that featured part of this with the siege detachment and the creeping barrage, and then they went and nerfed the crap out of it because they thought it was too strong. But the Basilisk it's just sitting here, just chilling with its Earthshaker rounds, just having a great time. I think it's better than the battle shock of the artillery team. I think it's better than the sustained hits of the fob because that doesn't just quite have enough punch that it needs. I just can't tell you the number of games that I have actually won thanks to this Basilisk. Just slow you down, off you go. Goodbye. Oh, you didn't make it there. I've literally beaten Death Guard players multiple times in tournaments just because they were like, oh, I'm going to take a bunch of Death Shroud. Enjoy your 2-inch move. And obviously that's with the index. Things may change with the upcoming codex, but the point still stands. You can really, really mess with people. So if the Basilisk has got a good profile, albeit one that you don't really care about, but still a good profile, and it's got a good gun, and it's got a good ability, why aren't we seeing these things in every bloody list, left, right, and center? Well, the answer is, we used to. But things have shifted and changed. And I think a lot of it comes down to perception rather than reality. Firstly, there is the perception that the Basilisk is too expensive. And this one isn't without its merit. The Basilisk comes in at 140 points. At time of recording, a field ordnance battery with bombast cannons is 110. An artillery team with siege cannon or any of the options is 95. If you've got a unit that is very good, but you can get one that's going to do a job good enough, up to 45 points cheaper, you can't blame players for being like, I'll go for the artillery team. Because a lot of the time it's easy to look at things and look at the Basilisk and look at the artillery team and go, well, the only difference is there's one AP, right? The artillery team is AP -1, the Basilisk AP -2. I guess the AP -2 is really useful, but 45 points is 45 points. I'll save it and just deal with the consequences. I mean, you could get nearly 5 points different, but you could get 3 artillery teams for the price of 2 basilisks. You're asking a lot of that extra pip of AP. But I think looking at it in those terms is a little bit wrong, because obviously I think that the basilisk ability is way, way, way better than the artillery teams. But it is hard to argue with the fact that you can get a 3-to-2 ratio in favour of the artillery teams because of how much cheaper they are. That's why a lot of players have moved away from them. You've also got the fact that the Basilisk has been nerfed from Index to Codex, and whenever anything gets nerfed, it gets tainted a little bit and people move away from it. Sometimes they come back because they realise that it was never actually that bad and the nerf was manageable, but still, people are moving away from it at the moment. The big nerf was that Basilisk lost the heavy keyword. So what used to happen is it used to hit on 4s, it'd be -1 to hit because it was shooting in direct fire, but it had heavy, so it would get +1 to hit. So without orders, it could just hit on 4s off its own back. Because it lost the heavy keyword, the Basilisk has essentially got to do the same as all other artillery now, which is if it wants to hit on a 4+, it needs the take aim order. Because you've got a whole bunch of artillery, like artillery teams and field batteries, which have got ballistic skill 5+, but they have the heavy keyword. So they hit on -1 for indirect fire, +1 for heavy. You apply take aim, they're hitting on 4s. It's the same thing with the Basilisk now. They're essentially both, all your artillery, whatever it is, all your artillery, if it wants to hit on 4s when firing indirect, it needs take aim. But that has to come from an officer, and that's an additional tax. And what's worse with the Basilisk is because it's not a infantry team, it hasn't got the regiment keyword, it can only receive orders from Rogal Dawn commanders, Leman Russ commanders, or the Lord Solar, all of which are very expensive choices and relatively limited. And typically your tanks are going to want to be pushing forward, drawing line of sight, which means they don't have as much inclination to sit back like the Basilisk do. So your orders may end up outpacing your Basilisks as they're pushing forward. Unless you've got the Lord Solar just sitting there, which isn't bad, but he is expensive. He's 150 points. He does come with extra CP and all that stuff, but again, you're asking Guard players to pay more points up front for the Basilisk, and then you're asking them to pay more points for the orders. 55 point Castellan to order 2 artillery teams, or 150 point Lord Solar to order your Basilisks. A lot of Guard players just aren't willing to pay those points. We are a Horde faction after all. We lean towards quantity over quality. You could say, but what about Combined Arms? Combined Arms does have a stratagem which allows you to have your infantry officers order your vehicles. That way you could have a cheap Castellan that then is bossing around the Basilisk. That does work, and that is a viable solution, but it does come with its own costs, because then you're not paying necessarily the points cost, but you are paying a CP cost, and that is a 2 CP stratagem. So you're going to need either Vox casters or Creed or a combination of both in order to get those Basilisks to be firing the way you want them to be firing. There is ways of doing it, but there's just more steps involved than going 2 artillery teams and a Castellan. And that's really what it comes down to. Points. At the end of the day, we only have 2,000 of them that we can use in a standard match play game, in a tournament list. And there are a lot of things that are demanding a lot of points at the moment. I think one of the big issues and why the Basilisk has fallen out of favour, despite the fact that, putting its points cost to one side, it is definitely the best Guard artillery, is because a lot of Guard points seem to have gone up. I don't know if it's just me, but when I was running Index Guard, I felt like, yeah, my units individually were a bit less capable, but I could fit everything and more that I wanted in a list. I could have 5 Leman Russes, 80 infantry, all the secondary game that I wanted, or artillery. It was all sorted. My mechanized list in the Index consisted of 6 Chimeras, 4 battle tanks, 3 Sentinels, infantry and all those Chimeras, and a couple of Basilisks. No problem whatsoever. Easily done. And now when I build a mech list, I'm like, I can't quite get the artillery and the secondary game. Everything's just more expensive. And some of those units are more capable, but a lot of them aren't. It feels like points have gone up and capability has kind of gone down. And so guard players, I think at this stage, are feeling like they need to squeeze every point. And so the perception is that the Basilisk is too expensive. That's why people aren't taking it, and that's why it's not. That's why people think it's a bad unit, but it's not. The reality is the Basilisk is great and is probably more than worth its points. Even with all attacks, it's probably more than worth its points. It's just that the reality is the points are being strained as it is, and so guard players are leaving the very capable Basilisks at home because they need to find points elsewhere. And, well, artillery, secondary game, those tend to be the first things that start getting cut, where the corners start getting cut, so that the frontline things like tanks and infantry and chimeras and stuff can keep operating at peak efficiency. Now, at this point, I'd normally say this is all like my opinion, man, and we move on, but there's one extra thing I want to add in here. There have been some guard players which have been theorizing, have been postulating, have been considering the Basilisk shifting its role away from an artillery piece with indirect fire to being an assault gun. You see, at the end of the day, the Basilisk is reasonably durable. It's got toughness 9, it's got 3+ save and 11 wounds. Anyone who's run a Chimera will tell you, yeah, they're not impossible to kill, but they're annoyingly durable. Your opponent has to put a bit more than they really want to into killing them. And when you look at the Basilisk and compare it to other artillery options, it's expensive. But when you compare it to other tanks, it's actually at the low end. It's in the same region as Hellhounds and Lemurous Vanquishers. It's 140 points. And it not having heavy is not a big deal there. And it's then able to keep up with the tank. It's going to still need orders. You don't want it hitting on on 3s. Or hitting on 4s. You want it hitting on 3s. But it being able to keep up with a Lemurous tank commander, because they both got a 10-inch move, is fine. And so you start thinking of the Basilisk not as an artillery piece. That the indirect fire becomes a thing it can do, but not necessarily a thing you're aiming with it as its main primary purpose. Instead, it starts being an assault gun. You think of it as a stug, not as a howitzer. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I haven't play tested this. I don't know if there's any merit in that. I don't know if it works. I think it is an interesting concept, but one that requires battlefield testing. The reason I've not done it is because it feels kind of wrong and it feels unnatural, but I do want to give it a go in a game. I want to give the assault gun Basilisks a fair try and see if it works. Then you start getting a bit more leverage out of things like the Hunter-Killer Missile. You start getting a bit more leverage out of the Heavy Bolter. It seems all right. I guess what is, I would say, the pushback I would give against this is, why wouldn't I just take a Vanquisher? If I'm thinking of using this in an assault gun capacity for 5 points more, I can get something that's so much more durable. I can get something that's got a better main gun, potentially, and all that kind of stuff. Maybe the way to look at this isn't necessarily one or the other, but it's a case of you taking Basilisks and Vanquishers and you're using them together as quite a cheap source of armor. I mean, 3 Vanquishers is only 435 points. 3 Basilisks is only 420 points. If you took all 6 of those, you're looking at what? 855 points? Now, if we then start thinking about combined arms, you can order nearly all of those with a single Creed command blob. In fact, let's drop down 1 Basilisk. Let's go 3 Vanks and 2 Basilisks. Take 1 Creed command blob, which is going to come in at 65, 65, 65, so 185 points. for, roughly off the top of my head, less than 1,000 points, you are going to get 5 pieces of armor, all with orders. And the Basilisks volume of 5 from their D6+3 can help offset a little bit of the Vanquisher's lack of volume with its main gun. There may be something there, but I will reiterate this: it is a theory at the moment. It is not a proven battlefield tactic. I will be testing it out, so keep an eye out for that video, and I'll let you know whether it ends up being good or ends up being a paper tiger. But that just about wraps everything up. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Do you still use Basilisks as your go-to artillery? Have you tried the ones out and find yourself coming back to them? And have you any experience with that Basilisk assault gun theory? And if so, how did it work out for you? If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to go ahead and smash that like button and also subscribe to never miss an episode. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian glory hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing, truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full time without the incredible and generous support of my members, so thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier patrons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Alex Dengal, Bon Vert, Lord Pryor, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, Try Again Bragg, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Barney. Seriously guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, see you guys next time.